Sea of Red, it's time for another Fireside Chat, the official podcast of Flames fans. It's go time.
Well, just when we count them out, the Calgary Flames have put up a good week, getting 5 of possible 8 points. And as always, I'm Dan alongside Matt to talk about this. Matt, there's still life in this team.
Yeah, they're not dead yet. Close, but they're still alive with the 2 weeks left to go in the season.
Well, this week the Flames had 4 games, 2 on the road, 2 at home. They started the week taking on the Colorado Avalanche. This is one that I think we didn't think would be nearly as close as it was, but the Flames somehow got the win in this one in the shootout, 3-2. Calgary rallied in the third, defeated the Avalanche for this one. What were your overall thoughts?
Well, the first 40 minutes of this game pretty much went as I think every Flames fan was kind of expecting in this game, where Colorado was more or less shoveling the Flames' head in for the first 40. Calgary did not look very good or prepared heading into the third period, and then they came alive, and it was the Adam Klapka show, and him and Ryan Lomberg created all sorts of havoc, scored twice within 30 seconds, and went all the way to the shootout where Sharangovich got the winner.
Are you surprised that Sharangovich was one of the shooters that was picked?
You have to go with your best shootout guys, and Sharangovich, despite struggling mightily in the regular season, has been one of the Flames' consistently good shooters in the shootout. And I know, like, some fans were criticizing Colorado's shooter choices, but if you go based on career shooting percentages, those were their 3 best shooters.
Ross Colton, Charlie Coyle, and Nikushkin were their 3 choices, and for the Flames, it was Frost, Sharangovich, Huberdeau, and the only one of those 6 shooters that scored was Sharangovich.
Yeah.
I thought this was a good Flames win. I thought, like you said, they came out looking a little, maybe a little behind, maybe looking a little intimidated is the way to say it. And I think that they were able to get their game together, and that's what helped them stay in this one. Obviously, they rallied in the third, like you said. Lomberg gets second of the year. Klapka gets his third of the year to get the Flames back into this one and tied. Not the guys you're expecting to see getting those goals, but you need contributions from the whole team. This was a fun one to watch.
Yeah, especially once the third period got going, and you could kind of feel that it was inevitable that the Flames were going to score a goal. Then when they got the one, it's like, okay, do they have enough in their tank to actually pull out the equalizer? And before pretty much anybody could react, it was a tie game, and it's just nice to see. It's hard when you go down 2-0 against a very good team to even force overtime, and Calgary showed that they could do it twice this week.
It's when you see games like that and you see the Flames play like that, you go, maybe there is still hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Utah happened.
So the next night, the Calgary Flames went to Salt Lake to take on the Utah Hockey Club in Utah. A team that is below them in the standings, and ended up losing 3-1 in this one. Vejmelka made 33 saves, and as Utah defeated the Flames, Wolf stopped 25 shots, but he's lost, I think this was his 3rd loss in 4 games for him, and overall, not a great game for the Flames.
No, and the first 40 minutes, once again, the scoring chances, like high danger scoring chances, were 12-0 for Utah.
Yeah.
After
Utah
40
ran
minutes.
over the Flames.
The Flames did score twice in this game, but one was waved off for reasons, none of which are exactly clear. The puck did appear to cross the goal line, and it was waved off due to being inconclusive, even though white was visible between the puck and the goal line. And that cost the Flames a point in the standings at least.
We'll talk about it later in the week when we get to last night's game against Vegas, but the Flames have really had I don't even want to say bad luck, but I don't know what's going on with the hockey gods, but they've had way more goals called back this year than they should.
Well, 5 straight questionable plays have all been decided one way, and it did kind of cost the Flames the Dallas Stars game where 2 goals got waved off, which would have sent the game to overtime. The Utah goal being waved off, which that would have sent that game to overtime, and the Vegas game, which would have actually ended the game in regulation, costing the Flames a point.
It's almost like the ghost of 04 is coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was, I don't know, I don't have much good to say about the Flames here. I guess they got more shots on goals than Utah. That's about it. But
they did try very hard in the third period, and Coronado had a couple of chances.
But he can't play 20 minutes and expect to win.
No. It worked the one night. You can't do it every night.
No, especially when you're fighting for your playoff lives. You've got to be ready to get in there and play 60 minutes. And, after watching this one, I thought to myself, the Flames are where they deserve to be.
Yeah.
And then they came home and took on the Mighty Ducks. I keep looking at the...
Formerly Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, I look at the logo and I still think Mighty Ducks, so they're back to the old logo. The Anaheim Ducks, now wearing their orange, which I actually quite like. I like the orange color scheme.
They're the regular Ducks.
That's right.
There's nothing mighty about
Nothing mighty about them as they fell 4-1 to the Flames. Coleman scored twice in this one, which is, we haven't seen a lot of scoring from him this season. We had goals from Kadri, Coleman, Rooney, and Coleman. So a lot of guys that outside of Kadri, we haven't seen a ton of scoring from. This is pretty much what I expected this to be.
Yeah, Anaheim is not very good, and we showed them why. Anaheim, after the first goal that Kadri scored, they had a little bit of life, the first 4 minutes of the game, and then you basically didn't notice them the rest of the night. There was, they did get the fluke equalizer on a series of defensive breakdowns, and that was basically their only good scoring chance the rest of the game, and Calgary just kind of ran over them once they figured out Gibson.
It's interesting that the last 2 games against the teams have had the same final score, 4-1 Calgary, both January 30th and April 3rd, and they'll play once more again on April 9th. So we get one more chance to run over this team.
Yeah. Not much to say in this one, Calgary. Both teams looked a little sluggish through the first 30 minutes, but Calgary turned on the Jets after Coleman's shorthanded goal and didn't look back. They just ran over them. This
felt like one of those times when the Flames were playing down to their opponent and could have...
Then they realized that, hey, we are better than them. Hey, let's just go.
I kept getting the feeling that this could have gone the wrong way for them at any point. And they needed to, like you said, they look sluggish. And I'm like, okay, guys, you've got the lead. Let's go. Let's get this going. And when they finally did kind of lock it down, they ended up taking over the game.
Mm-hmm.
And going from one of the worst to one of the best in the league, the best team in the Western Conference right now, the Vegas Golden Knights are sitting at 100 points. I think that's actually the best in second best in the league right now, with Washington above them and Winnipeg as well. So yeah, they're second best in the West. Best in our division. Vegas Golden Knights come into Calgary. This is a team that the Flames have notoriously had troubles with so far this year.
We got shut out both times.
5-0 on October 28th. 3-0 on December 29th, and didn't get shut out this time, but still lost in overtime in a weird, fluky goal, 3-2 final here. I was at the Dome for this one. I'll start with my thoughts. I didn't think the team looked all that great in the first. It looked like what you see so often from the Flames, where they're just kind of running around trying to figure out what to do against a good team. And Vegas, I thought, moved the puck really well. I thought Vegas moved Calgary out of the front of the net really well. This looked like a good team versus bad team. This kind of looked like when we played the Ducks the game before. I thought that in the second...
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of the Colorado game, where we're just kind of shell-shocked a little bit in the first portion of the game. But then we're able to settle things down and start to turn the game a bit.
Yeah, and then Joel Hanley scored early in the second. That, I thought, really started to sort of lock the Flames in and get them where they need to be. Coronado got the third period tiebreaker, and then we almost had a Michael Backen goal there just as the buzzer went. But What a heartbreaker in the overtime.
Yeah,
here.
and once again, another goal review where the puck looked to be over the line, and once again waved off for reasons.
If you were in the Saddle Dome, it was pretty funny. They had right on the Jumbotron, they'd isolated and blown up right where the puck was, and they were showing it as the refs were on the phone with the situations room to show it's past the red line. It's clearly past the red line. And then the refs have to have that on the screen while they're telling us it's a no goal.
Yeah. And, yes, it might have been waved off for goaltender interference. And. It just feels off when, in the span of 2 weeks, when you're in the midst of a very tough playoff battle, to have one team only getting every single call against them, which impacted at least 3 points in the standings. And when the Flames have games in hand on the team ahead of them and are down by 4 points, the Flames' chances to actually make the playoffs if they had received beneficial calls, they could be 1, 2, 3 points closer. It does make a difference, and it's very frustrating.
I don't want to blame the refs, but if the Flames don't make the playoffs this year and they keep the margin as slim as they are, I think there would be an argument to be made that the refs were the reason they didn't make it in.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, I remember back a couple of seasons ago when the Flames lost to the Oilers and Blake Coleman wrongly, in my opinion, got a goal taken away that would have been the tying goal in Game 5. The results of the series probably would have been the same with the Flames losing because they were down 3-1 in the series. But when you're losing the game and the referees seem to be on the opposing team's side of things, it just, it's hard to win and, feel good about situations when, you're having to literally overcome the refs in addition to your opponent.
Yeah, and I thought after that Dallas game when they had, 2 of them called back, I thought that was about it, and this keeps going on, and I don't know why. It's almost like somebody, was sitting around the league office and hey, remember that Weidman thing? Oh yeah, we should probably keep hating the Flames for that. I don't know why all of a sudden the Flames are getting penalized in every game.
Yeah, and it would be one thing if a goal here went our way, a goal there.
Well, that's it. Yeah, but we haven't had the opposite.
It's no, it's been consistently. Oh, Calgary isn't a questionable play. Well, give it to the call to the other team, and it's
exactly.
And usually things are balanced, but over the last few weeks, it's been extremely one-sided.
Yeah, I'm hoping that that's not going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
But after those 4 games, the Calgary Flames still sit outside the wild card spots right now. St. Louis has 12 wins in a row, sitting at 93 points for the last wild card spot, tied with Edmonton. Minnesota sitting at 89 points. They have the second wildcard spot. Calgary sits at 85 points. Sorry, it would have been 86 if they won last night, but 85. And Vancouver at 83. So the Calgary Flames right now are 76 games played, 36 wins, 27 losses, 13 overtime losses, and they have 1 game in hand on Minnesota. 6 games left, 1 against Minnesota. These last 6 games are going to be crucial, especially I think the most crucial game from here on out is the one Friday against Minnesota.
Yeah, the Flames need to win that one in regulation to have a chance. Realistically, if they don't win that one, it's a situation where the Flames need to win the other 5 and Minnesota needs to kind of lose out.
And, really, if you look at it, Matt, we've got San Jose twice. We've got the Ducks again. Of our last 6 games, 3 of them are against very winnable opponents.
Yeah, so if Calgary can manage, and currently in the game going on, Dallas is up on Minnesota, it could very well be that the Flames can catch the Wild. It's just Minnesota also plays us, San Jose, Anaheim, and Vancouver, so they don't exactly have the hardest competition either in down the stretch.
Yeah, and if this comes down to the last couple of games, we've got Vegas and we got the Kings, and those could be scary games for the Flames.
Mm-hmm.
Well, taking a look at one of the stories of this week that I want to talk about, it's Adam Klapka, a guy we've seen come up to the NHL, be sent back down to the AHL, come back to the NHL. Matt, with this recall, I think Adam Klapka is an NHLer, and I think he's with the Calgary Flames stay this year and should be on the roster next year. He looks like he's finally ironed out some of the sort of the rough edges he had in his game, and he looks like he belongs on that fourth line.
Well, he has always been a player that he almost basically doesn't realize how strong and powerful he can be as a player. And then he will like take a little bit of liberties and then realize, oh, I can do that. And then he carries forward doing that from that point on. And like, he is what basically the biggest player in the NHL. Like, if he wants to go to the net, there's not really too many people that can say, no, you're not going there. So, you know, he needs to realize that, hey, he does have a special ability where he can just do what he wants out there. And if he wants to engage physically or drive the net or do virtually anything, he can. And he's been learning, it seems, as he's been getting more accustomed to be in the NHL, that, oh, I can actually get away with this kind of thing. Let's go.
I think that for a while, his whole game was being big, and he didn't quite know what he is. And obviously the Flames have been trying to get him to play that sort of a gritty style in the fourth line. But I feel like he's finally kind of figured out who he is and what his game is. And, he's learned how to do that gritty, but also have a little more of the offensive upside. Like, I think almost like Coronado, where we had to send him up and down a few times to really iron things out. I feel like he's finally got his game together. It's not just, I'm large.
Yeah, and he does deceptively have some pretty good offensive skill. He is a fairly decent passer, and his shot is fairly good. And if he can just muscle his way into positions for him to score, he can create havoc, much like Pospisil did a year ago, where, like if he crashes the net, like the Rooney goal against Anaheim, where he basically charged the net and the puck went out to Rooney for basically a tap-in. If he can utilize that ability, he could be a 25, 30-point guy and an effective third-line crash-bang type winger, which that would be very good for this team.
Yeah, I think, next year, just looking at the roster and looking at who's going to be on the roster, I think he probably starts near fourth line with Lomberg, and I'm guessing Kirkland at center there because I don't think Rooney comes back. I don't see him moving on to the third line because that would mean Coleman, Farabee, Huberdeau, Coronado, Pospisil, or Sharangovich would need to move to the fourth line, and I just can't see that happening at this point.
Yeah. It's one of those where competition will be good, and I think him and Pospisil now are fighting for more or less the same spot in the lineup, and the winner will be the third line player, and the loser will be the fourth line player. But I think both will be effective players for this team.
I can even, Matt, see a scenario where, because Klapka is the cheaper one and maybe the less valuable piece on the open market, where Klapka's kept and Pospisil's potentially moved.
That is also a potential thing.
I could see you're not going to get a ton for him, but I could see him, on draft day flipping Pospisil for somebody else. I think the Flames, unlike the defense, I think the forwards are all pretty much penciled in for next year, except for Rooney, and that spot I think goes to Kirkland. Like, I think if you want to make any movement on the top, or even bring in a guy like Suniev, someone's got to come out. And I just think Pospisil has not looked like, and maybe it's just one season, we'll see what happens next year, but I think that we might have seen the best of Marty Pospisil already.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, as you come into the NHL, you are doing what you're doing, and then the league reacts to what you're doing, and you have to kind of learn how to react to the league's reaction, and we haven't really seen that counterbalance from Pospisil this year. And his game, when he's not being overtly a disturber, is kind of limited, and we haven't really seen him engaging as he's been kind of walking the line, sometimes over it. We haven't seen him quite up to the line that he had been when he was very effective last year.
Yeah, and I think that I think the Flames are trying to get something more out of Postl that I don't think he's able to give, and I don't think they would try that with Klapka. Like, I don't know if they're like right now. Postl's playing on what is the Flames' first line. We saw him play some center this year. I don't know why they're trying to squeeze more out of Postl. I think they're trying to get something that's not there.
Yeah, which it never hurts to give a guy like Pospisil some rope to see if he can figure out an offensive niche in his game, because then you have a guy like Tom Wilson on your hands who is both an effective scorer for your team and a righteous pain in the butt to play against. And, I would much rather them try to find something with both Pospisil and Klapka to try to liberate that offense, because then all of a sudden you have an extremely effective player that you can kind of rely on to just make the other team's day not fun.
Yeah, no, that's true. So we'll see what happens there, but I think you'll see. I think Klapka's here to stay.
Oh yes, I think both are, and we'll see. Especially as the competition grows heading into next year.
And then, Matt, a couple more names I wanted to talk about before we get to my big topic that I want to run by you for the week. One of them is Sam Honzek. Sam Honzek, we saw start the year here with the Flames. He got hurt, got sent down. Now he's hurt again with the Wranglers. This is, I think, the third year in a row that he's had a significant injury, and he's only 20 years old. Like, I'm starting to wonder here with a guy like this who's already this injury prone, what do you think the chances that this becomes a bit of a bust because he's just always hurt or not able to live up to his potential?
Well, we've seen this rodeo before with Jacob Peltier, where he missed significant time over several seasons and only just started to find his game before we traded him. Connor Zary missed years of his development.
And still is.
And has had two significant injuries this year. And, he was on the trajectory to be a top six forward, potential top line center, potentially. And now, it's debatable whether or not Zary's just going to cap out as more or less an effective second, third line center or winger. And Honzek, he showed a lot of brilliance during the preseason and the higher end upside that he potentially had, where he looked like he could potentially be a impact two-way player. But if he continues to have injuries after injuries after injuries, you're looking at more of a third, fourth line, maybe a second line player, where, he might have had first line upside if not for all of these things. And
I mean, we talked about Jeremy Poirier, the Flames defensive prospect last year, who missed significant time, and how, he probably needed another year just to get that development time out of him. Like, if you're Sam Honzek and you're missing huge swaths of development time, I think that's also going to delay when he gets to the NHL, because you need that time in the American League before you just call a guy up. Like, let's just say at Christmas time, I would have said, yeah, I'm penciling Zary in, or sorry, not Zary. Well, Zary as well. I mean, Zary's been hurt, but I'm penciling both Zary and Honzek onto the Flames opening day roster next year. Right now, for both those guys, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I would assume that Zary would be, just because of waiver status more than anything. But
yeah, I just wonder if we don't know exactly when his injury is going to be over. I don't know if he'll be. Well, I guess he'll probably be ready by next year.
Yeah, it's just tough, and you never like to see your first round picks getting hurt, and the Flames just unfortunately have run into a series of years, whether it's Valimaki, who had his development stalled
Shillington.
because of it. Shillington, everybody basically, that's showing flashes of brilliance getting derailed at some point. Like,
so do we just wrap Parekh up in bubble wrap?
Pretty much, yeah.
Him and Grit in, make sure that neither of them gets hurt by anything.
Well, like even Andrew Basha last year, he's been hurt for most of the season too, and mind you, he plays more of like the reckless, postseason type game, so. It's tough, and injuries do happen.
It's tough, I think, especially when we're in this rebuild, right? When we are needing young players, and now some of your promising young players are probably not going to make it to the high end just because they're constantly injured.
Yeah, and then, realistically, if you look at the Flames' forward prospects, guys like Suniev and Honzek are near the top of it, but even then, they're profiling to, their upside is a second line forward. And, when injuries derail things, much like Peltier, who also, when we drafted him, looked like he was going to be a second line, energy type guy. And, he basically capped out as more of a fourth line player while he was with us. And as the injuries mount, the increasing likelihood that the returns from those players will diminish. And it's tough when the Flames are in this section of the rebuild where they don't have a ton of talent and are needing goal scorers and the like, and to have a good portion of them getting derailed from random injuries.
Yeah, no, I think that's why I'm thinking about it, because it's what, these guys, I still think Poirier's the hottest defensive prospect the Flames have in the professional system. So taking out, Parekh, who's in the OHL, and he lost a good portion last year. I don't know what it is, but the Flames are just getting hit by this injury bug. And I think, Sam Honzek looked promising. I'm not writing him off after one season, but again, with Honzek, it's been 3 seasons now. And that tells me that, I don't know, he's not drinking his milk and his bones are brittle, or I'm not sure what it means, but it's not just one bad season. With Zari, I think we can say, okay, we've seen him be a pro for, a couple decent seasons now of being reliable. Now he's hurt. I'm not too worried that that'll derail him. We'll see what happens next year. Sometimes you just have a bad year of injury. But with
and even then, there was up until he made his NHL debut, basically everybody had kind of written Zari off because he had missed so much time.
Yeah, and then he looked reliable. He looked like he'd gone past whatever it was he was dealing with.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see and a storyline for us to cover. It's just hard in terms of asset management for this team and the whole rebuild status, because realistically, a team to come out of a rebuild, you need to have a ton of players because you lose a whole bunch of them for various reasons, whether they just their game doesn't translate, or they get hurt, or whatever. And that's part of the reason why I've been continually advocating for the acquisition of draft picks, just to get more darts to throw at the board, just because you look at Gradin, Basha, and Battaglia being the 3 more important forward draft picks from this past season, and one of the 3 missed basically most of the season. And while the other 2 are doing really good, we haven't seen how they translate. And you're kind of just hoping that one of them turns into an NHL regular. And, it's tough when you have 12 spots to fill. And, 3 of those players, you might only get 1 that actually translates. And
yeah, and I think right now, if I'm Conroy, if I'm looking at my, wing spots, I think that's where we all know Honzek's probably going to be. Or even, well, let's say a forward spot. I don't think you can say, okay, we're going to leave a spot for this guy because you don't know if he's going to be healthy, and you can't say, okay, we're going to give this guy a spot. Oh crap! Now we got to fill it with somebody else. I think you've almost got to bring him in, looking at him as being the number 13, and if he's healthy, great. If not, we need to have another option.
Yeah, and it's tough to manage a roster like that when,
and you're also less likely,
especially
you're also less likely to
when,
move a piece to fit him in if you're not sure if he's going to be healthy.
Well, and then on top of it, like if you're trying to go into playoff team mode, you need to have players that you can kind of reliably count on to participate with your team. And that leaves less opportunities for the guys that are oft injured, even though it's not necessarily their fault. Sometimes it is just bad luck. Like Zari's two leg injuries this year were just bad coincidentalness. But,
coincidental injuries are going to happen, but when you have a guy who has 3 years of injury history, as a GM, I don't think you can say, I'm going to make a spot for this guy. And then he's gone. So I think, at this point, you've almost...
Well, and we saw that with Ottawa and Buffalo, where Ottawa traded Josh Norris for Dylan Cousins and Jacob Bernard-Docker, both of whom were very good young players heading to Buffalo, but both of those guys were very oft injured. And, whether they bounce back with the Sabres or not, those can be the types of trades that bite you in the butt when you move on from those type of players, because if their injury troubles go away and they are effective, you can easily get the short end of the stick in that example. And that did happen famously with Vancouver trading Cam Neely, who was injured off and on, then basically was fine with Boston after that point and, became an elite player with the Bruins. And, it's tough for any GM having to deal with this particular situation.
Yeah, it just sucks that some of the young players that the Flames need right now during their rebuild look like they might be unreliable for no fault of their own besides the injury bug. But talking about two other players that might be able to take roster spots soon, the Calgary Flames have signed Aydar Suniev. He was their third round pick, number 80 overall in 2023. He's been playing in juniors, so he's been playing UMass for NCAA for the last couple of years. He was in the Penticton V's before that. This year, he played in 35 games, had 38 total points, and he's gone pro. The Flames have announced that they've signed him. He's now 20 years old. He is 6'2", 198 pounds. He's a Russian, and he's now with the Flames, has been given number 36. I think you will see him in a game this year. I think, Matt, you were mentioning it before we started recording today, but I think, the Flames run the roster they have until the Minnesota game, which I think is the tipping point, and then you might see Suniev in after that. But good signing. I don't see him being a pro I don't see him being a Flame for this team next year, but I see him a good piece for the Wranglers.
Yes, and frankly, the Flames in the 2023 draft were set to draft him in the second round, but did not anticipate Etienne Morin falling to their spot when they drafted, and they took the player with the higher upside and weren't expecting him to be around for pick 80, and he just kind of fell in their lap, and okay, we'll take him too then, and otherwise he would have been the Flames' second round pick. But he has been a relentless player in the NCAA. His stats mirror Matthew Coronado's in his draft plus 1 year. And he is a 6'2" player who, to harken back, he plays a very similar game to guys like Pospisil and Klapka in terms of, being the crash and bang type player, but he also has one hell of a shot, like Coronado.
Yeah, I think he has more offensive upside than both Pospisil and Klapka.
Yes, and this is a player that I'm actually, of the Flames forward prospect group, he is number one on my list.
Even then, I don't think you see him in a Calgary Flames jersey next season for more than, say, a few call-up games.
Yeah, unless he tears the leather off the ball, so to speak. Where, he's leading the Wranglers in scoring at the end of November type of thing next year. He might get a recall, much like how Zary and Pospisil were sent down and then
Mind
called
you,
up.
Kieran's just tearing up the Wranglers, got a recall and got sent back down, so you never know.
True. True, but I think because of Suniev being like a 6'2", 210 player, he is very much more suited for the NHL just due to his physical body. And then, I think the primary thing with him is just how his offensive game translates to the NHL level. And he has been a very good defensively minded player, which is atypical for Russian players, but he's been a force at both ends of the ice.
Shaniev's a left winger, so to make the team next year, he would have to be better than Sharangovich, Huberdeau, Farabee, or Lomberg. Like, I don't see where you get into that lineup.
Oh, me either. And the one comfortable thing with wingers, though, is that there's usually a built-in flexibility for players to switch from one side to the other.
Sure, but even then, he's going to be better than Postl, Coronado, and Coleman.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily that hard because the right side's a little easier because Pospisil's not very good.
That's true.
So I do not expect him to make the team next year.
I think even if they're going to look at bringing a guy up, it would be an older guy like Stromgren who'd probably get that third line spot if they were going to do that.
I agree. And I think that he will probably get his cup of coffee this year, probably the last game or two.
I think I would not be surprised if we see him in all three of the final games. If the Flames are not if the Flames are out.
Yeah, it just depends on if the Flames are in it still, you probably don't see him until the very end of the LA game, assuming we're eliminated by then. But if we're still alive on our next show, then I think we'll see, we'll be talking about predicting what game he appears in.
And the other one that's exciting is the Saginaw Spirit of the OHL got eliminated last night, Saturday night, from the OHL playoffs. Not that that's exciting in and of itself, but that opens up Zayne Parekh as an option for the Flames to bring over. We know that Zayne Parekh was their first pick in the draft last year. A lot of excitement around this kid. He's having a heck of a year in the OHL, and they could turn him pro at this point if they wanted to. Parekh has recorded 75 points in his final 32 games this year. He's been on a tear after being snubbed from the World Juniors. I don't think that you see Parekh go back to the OHL next year. There's nothing more for him to prove. I would be shocked if we don't see him in a Flames jersey this season.
Honestly, I could see him play all 6 games to finish the year. The reason being is that offensively, the Flames do not really have a true power play threat. And somebody that can play at that kind of level. And Parekh, although young, the manner in which he was scoring and setting up plays, we do not have that kind of weapon. And with the Flames doing everything but generating tons of offense, even if they settle him as a third pairing guy and a power play specialist in those 6 games, we did see firsthand when Colorado brought up Cale Makar during our playoff series against them, what kind of effect that had. We were first, they were 8th. We got our butts handed to us by him primarily. It can make a big deal. And
unlike the forwards, easy to find a spot for him. I mean, if you look at the top 6 for the Flames right now, it's Hanley, Uyghur, Anderson, Ball, Bean, Pakal. I think the obvious one there is take Bean out of the lineup.
Yeah, exactly. And, frankly, the defensive side of the game between Bean and Parekh is not that far off. Bean is...
Even if you wanted to leave Bean in and take Hanley out and put Parekh with Uyghur, I could see that happening.
Yes. The Flames' bottom 3 defensemen are not exceptionally good defensively. So, having a guy who might make a mistake here or there, it's worth the offensive upside to include him in, just because the Flames need offense. And, hey, you can throw a 100-plus point defenseman into your lineup, you do it.
I don't anticipate Parekh necessarily being on the Flames roster next year. We'll see. I think from some of the actions we've seen from him, I think he might need a year of American League seasoning, even just to become a professional?
Next year he's NHL or OHL. He can't go to the Wranglers.
Is he?
Yes.
Is he 18 or 19?
He just turned.
He's 19.
Yeah, he just turned 19. So
okay.
Yeah, he's not eligible next year for the AHL.
Then, yeah.
So he'll probably end up starting the NHL and just
then in that case he'll at least start there. I think they could send him down as of his birthday's in February, so you're not going to keep him on the roster till February and send him down. But yeah, in that case, then they'd probably keep him up, and that's fine. If they had the option, I think they'd send him down. But yeah, if they can't, then yeah, you keep him up there, and I think this could be a good time to see what he's got. So his team was eliminated Saturday night. You probably don't want to call the guy Saturday night and wave a contract in his face. The Flames play again on Monday. I could see him boarding the plane with the team for that one, and even if not, I could see him joining them before the Anaheim game.
Yeah. I would be somewhat surprised if we don't see him down the stretch this year.
Me too. They're not going to not turn him pro. Like, there's nothing else for this guy to do at the OHL level.
Yeah, like he's already signed, ready to go. They can just insert him in the lineup anytime.
Yeah, and I, like you said, I think you would insert him right when he gets there. I guess I was going to say it's not that big of a trip, but from Ontario to San Jose, that's a much longer trip than it is from Calgary.
True.
So yeah, maybe he needs a bit of a rest for that first game, but yeah, I think you'll probably see him in the lineup for the majority of the year. And he was at training camp given number 89, so you're going to be looking for 89 on the ice if you see him. I don't think they revert him to 19 yet, but yeah, look for him. I think it would be if he doesn't play. I think the question would be why. And, has he screwed something up, or is he not showing the professionalism they want? Like, I think this guy has to get in.
Yeah, well, especially with the Flames' overall weakness on the blue line.
Yeah.
It's
a lot easier to put a blue liner in than it is a forward.
Yeah, like with both lacking offense and defense on the blue line, where the Flames are basically playing 3-6-7 guys. Throwing a guy who might be a top pairing offensive player in even as like the 5-6 guy makes 100% sense.
Yeah, I think you'll definitely see him there. All right, well, Matt, big question I wanted to chat with you about for this week. Interesting idea, and I've heard it floated by a number of Flames pundits out there. The Flames have many of their own draft picks. They have their own first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh coming in this year. Potentially, they might lose the first, but they have all of them again in the 2026 draft, which is the one that really matters here. Should the Flames use offer sheets, and we saw what St. Louis was able to do by offer sheeting, to go out and try to find a top player or a center? And some of the names that I looked at who would potentially be available, I don't think they need a defenseman. Noah Dobson and Evan Bouchard, probably the top two D-men, but Marco Rossi, Kappo Kakko, and I think the most intriguing name, Matthew Knies out of Toronto. Do you think it would be advisable for the Flames to spend the picks it would take to try and improve their team through an offer sheet?
Well, firstly,
do you want to be giving up first at this point?
Firstly, I do not see the Flames spending their first, just because of the fact that basically everything went right this year for this team, and while we're close to a playoff spot, we don't have anybody that's coming into the team next year that will even guarantee that we'll finish where we're at. So likely with older players regressing and, just the team as a whole regressing.
Kadri can't keep looking like Superman, can he?
No. Same with Huberdeau and Backlund and Coleman. Father Time is undefeated. So unless you're Alex Ovechkin. But, the Flames are going to probably regress, and you don't want to lose a top 10 pick, a top 5 pick for a player that's a second line forward.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't think there's anybody on that list, and I don't think Matthew Knies makes it to that point. I think whatever.
No, I think that they'll let Tavares go to keep Knies than
Yeah.
spending the money on Tavares.
Well, that's it. And I think they would find a way to match whatever offer came out for Knies, unless it was crazy. And the Flames aren't going to do something crazy there, because the crazier the offer, the more you got to give up for picks. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think I can see this coming down the road. I don't know that now's the time for it. If we were one or two pieces away, and we said, you know what, there's a playoff caliber team, let's go plug those holes. Sure. But right now, I think the more important thing is having the draft picks.
Yeah, and like a player like Evan Bouchard, who's probably going to get a figure in the $8 to $9 million range, where it's a first plus. Like if you're a team, say like the Florida Panthers or the Tampa Bay Lightning, who you're going to be picking 25th to 30th regardless, it makes sense for that team to utilize the first plus, because who cares? Let's put Edmonton in even more of a cap hell situation by maximizing where we're not giving 4 firsts, but make it as close, like dollar for dollar, just under that threshold. And for a team like that, it makes sense. For a team like Calgary, who has a Evan Bouchard-like player in Zayne Parekh already in the system.
Yeah, I don't think these guys are going to do it for a defenseman. I think if they're going to do it, they're going to do it for a forward.
Yeah. And of the three that you mentioned between Knies, Kakko, and Rossi, I would go with Kakko myself, just because of his size more than anything. But again, I think both Seattle and Minnesota have enough cap space, and Toronto would likely do anything to keep Knies in the fold.
Yeah, and I think that if you're going to spend that on Kappo Kakko, I think you could probably find a comparable player on UFA if you needed to.
Yeah, or you could trade for a like player, which will basically cost you the draft picks that you're wanting to send out anyway. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think
there's more ways to do it than one, and while the offer sheets, I would have liked the Flames to have offer sheeted for Holloway last year and Broberg, but it also didn't make sense given where the Flames were at in their rebuild to do it at that point. But it was extremely tempting, and boy did it work out for the Blues.
Yeah, and I think, we tend to look at recent history, and it worked for the Blues. That doesn't mean it works for everybody, but the league tends to...
most of the time it just, it's like Kotkaniemi with the Hurricanes, where he just, was a $2 million player getting paid $6 million.
Exactly.
And... and then it's like, how fast can we move this guy because he's not actually good?
Yeah, and I think that you'll probably see some team try to do it because the Blues did it, but I don't want everyone jumping on this trend. And I think I'm not and like you said, there's many ways to do this, and that's why I wanted to talk about it for the Flames, because I think it's worth exploring. And if you're Craig Conroy, I think your office has to explore the possibility, but none of these guys that are available, I think, would be worth the assets. I think right now the Flames need the draft picks.
Yeah, and realistically, the Flames' biggest need on the pro team is a high-impact scorer or two, and just quality defensemen. And, while Dobson and Bouchard are quality defensemen, you can insert the name of any UFA or trade for any of a whole laundry list of players to fill the holes that they have. And, getting a scorer, you either need to draft them or, say, offer Marner $13 million a year. And that, you're either going to do that or he's going to sign somewhere else. And regardless, that there's not really much you can do to address that, especially where we're at.
Bowen Byram, I think, is an RFA too. I don't think he's going to make it to... off-sheet territory. I think they'd match whatever you would offer him. So
yeah, and if anything, they'd be more apt to trade him at the draft just to shake their blue line up than to keep him if they're, not necessarily wanting to give him what he wants as an RFA.
Yeah, Yeah, if you want him, you could probably acquire him through trade.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's the best thing to do, but it's been talked about by Flames media this past week, so I thought we'd cover it as well. But I think right now, keep the picks.
Yeah, and frankly, with where this team is and the increasing likelihood that this team is going to go downward in the standings next year, just because we don't have anybody imminently coming to help besides Parekh. And there's only so much a rookie defenseman can do.
That's it.
Yes, we could spend to the cap, but even then, I would not envision this team basically being any better.
No, and even if we spend
now.
to the cap, you and I have talked about it. I mean, you could try to spend to the cap, but then you get back into the living problem you have of every year being a perennial contender, but having no futures, because that's what it takes to get those kind of players in, and sort of being this, always the bridesmaid, never the bride, as they say, and having this perennial, we're good, but not good enough. And now we make a few changes and still not good enough. What
we'd basically be the Minnesota Wild.
We need to rebuild.
Yeah.
And you need picks to do that.
Yes. And realistically, next season, the draft there are 7 or 8 players that are of a higher tier, and probably would go first or second overall this year. If the Flames do falter next year, the increasing likelihood that we'll actually get a premier player like a Monahan, Tkachuk type guy is there. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if this team regresses to the mean next year.
That's very true, man. Well, should we look ahead to the next week for the Flames?
Yes.
We're almost done here. The season, we got 6 games left, not too many. This week, 3 games. The week before, after that, 3 games. The Flames season coming to an end, and the Flames are going on the road for the first part of this week. They'll be doing the California road swing Monday night, an 8:30 start time here in Calgary, the latest possible start you can have for a Flames game, and that's against the San Jose Sharks. Wednesday, they will move to Anaheim, take on the Ducks, 8 p.m. start time, and then Friday, they come back here to the Dome, taking on the Minnesota Wild, a big game. That's the team they need to, outlast in order to make the playoffs. So we got 3 games on the table. Didn't do well last week. I thought we'd beat Utah and Anaheim, lose to Colorado, Vegas. You thought we'd win Anaheim, lose the rest. What are you thinking for this week?
Well, frankly, this team needs 6 points in order to be alive. So I'm going to go with 6 points because any other result is basically disaster for this team.
Yeah, it is. I mean, 2 of these are winnable. The first 2 you should be winning, especially after, just beating the Ducks 4-1. I'm not convinced this team beats Minnesota, though. My gut says they win the first 2, they lose Minnesota.
Yes, which would be curtains on the season.
It would. So I'm going to go with that as much as it pains me. I'm going to say that they beat San Jose, beat Anaheim, lose to Minnesota. And we will see what happens if that happens. But like you said, that's pretty much it. If that happens, you need those points against Minnesota, and you've got to be able to beat them. And you can't just be, beating the bottom teams to get in there. So I don't like to say that, but I think the Flames will probably lose against Minnesota.
Yep. I'm agreeing with you, but, have to throw the full weight.
Got to keep the faith.
Yep.
Wolf all week?
Yeah, I don't see a situation basically until the Flames are figuratively out that you see Vladar. And Vladar might get the Vegas and or LA game if the Flames are out, but I think you'll pretty much see Wolf the rest of the way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. With 6 games left, I think you probably see Wolf in 5 of the 6. I think all week this week you see Wolf. If they're out after that, I could even see Vladar taking the second Anaheim or the second Sharks game just to give them a bit of a different look from what they saw the week before.
Yeah, but that's about it. I think that you need your best players to be your best players. and the season rides and dies on Wolves' backs the rest of the way. So, I think that you pretty much have to, and hope for the best.
So Flames are 4 points down right now from Minnesota, and they have 6 points on the board this week. 2 of those come from Minnesota, so we'll see what happens this week. This is going to be more interesting than April hockey should be.
Yes, and Minnesota is currently down 1-0 after 2 periods against the Dallas Stars, and their opponents the rest of the way are San Jose, us, Vancouver, and Anaheim. So they have a little bit of an easier end of their season where we play Vegas and LA. But,
mind you, the only thing to remember about those games, I don't think Vegas or LA plays a full roster.
They're definitely gonna,
already this week, the Flames took on the third string goaltender for the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, well, and you see that with St. Louis basically being on the heater to end all heaters, they're going to play the winner of the Pacific Division. So I don't think that either LA or Vegas is particularly going to be interested in acquiring points the rest of the way. To try and, because I would much rather play Edmonton in the first round than St. Louis, and I think that both Vegas and LA would reluctantly want to play St. Louis if that happens, but they're not going to be gunning for it, I don't think.
Yeah, I can see that. So, but even then, you don't want to play your top guys if you don't need to, and so I think one of the benefits for the Flames could be that by the time they get to those 2 top teams, they're going to have a lesser roster against them.
They will probably, especially the Vegas game, because I do believe that's their last game of the year. They're going to be resting guys like Carlson, Smith, Dorofeev.
Yeah, that should be our last game too. The only reason we have the LA one is a makeup.
Yes. So, they're going to be resting their main guys, probably, because who needs to, probably the games, both of them for those 2 teams will not matter at all, so they're going to be wanting to rest up as much as possible.
That's the benefit for the Flames. But I want 6. I don't think we see 6 points. Let's see how this week goes. And Matt, you and I will chat next week, hopefully talking about the Flames pulling ahead of or tying at least with the Wild.
And I do have to say one thing before signing off is that through all of this, I have to give the Flames a very major tip of my hat because, we're 2 weeks to go in the season and we're still talking about a playoff race that isn't if the stars align. And the effort that this team has given has been remarkable, and every single one of the players can be proud of the effort that they gave this year, because for all of the situation, they have been full marks, and just hope that they can muster everything through the last 6 games and find a way to play a few more. So, as always, go Flames go.
Fireside Chat is hosted by Dan Stevenson, co-hosted by Matt DeBorg. This episode produced and edited by Peter Marino. Fireside Chat is licensed under Creative Commons license. For full license details, visit firesidechat.ca.